Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Ethan Wong. I am the high school intern at the Citizen Advocacy Center, and today I'm very excited to share my findings and research on ALPR in Illinois. And what is ALPR? ALPR, otherwise known as automatic license plate readers, are cameras that are typically mounted to a variety of objects, both stationary and moving. Some examples that you can see in your town could be street poles, police cars, and walls. However, these cameras, they capture any vehicle in its vicinity, its license plate, along with collecting other information like the date, location, and time in which the picture was taken. This data is then stored into a main database, which these databases are pretty much a system and network where all this data is put into. These data systems are not uniform, however, as there is no real uniform database. These databases are limited to private companies, law enforcement agencies, and private individuals, their cameras that they have. Examples of these companies are like Flock Safety, Motorola Solutions, but they also include things in many local towns, such as local police forces, and in Illinois, the LEAD system, which is basically a system where the Illinois State Police collects information from different criminal records and ALPR information. A fun fact that you should know about these ALPR databases too is that the ALPR databases have a set period of time before the data and photos are deleted. For leads, there is a 90-day period where if an officer or a public defendant is not using the information found in the database, then that information will be deleted. And who can access ALPR information? While, like the databases, there is no uniform system, according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, there should only be certain individuals that can access ALPR databases. That being people like authorized officers with specific training, certifications, and background checks, along with audits and imposing regulations that comply with other license plate reader systems. And currently in Illinois, there are multiple changes in multiple issues revolving ALPR. The most concerning issue that many people have pointed out includes privacy issues and Fourth Amendment issues, specifically due to the nature of ALPR and the fact that the cameras take pictures of any vehicle in their vicinity. Many have speculated that these cameras may infringe on people's Fourth Amendment rights of suspicionless and unwarranted searches. For example, too, there has been much discourse nationally about ALPR, as there are many systems like DFLOC, which is a movement started by people who want the flock cameras, like the flock security cameras, which are ALPR cameras, to be taken out, and they track all of these cameras throughout the nation. And in response, there have been two bills that have been introduced to the Illinois legislature, that being House Bill 5151 and House Bill 5231. And to add more context about ALPR in Illinois, the ALPR camera systems have been implemented due to the Tamara Clayton Expressway Camera Act. Basically, in 2019, a postal worker named Tamara Clayton was fatally shot on the expressway, which led to many in the Illinois Congress to create the Tamara Clayton Expressway Camera Act, which essentially implemented ALPR cameras in Cook County. But then in 2022, it was updated to include over 22 counties and Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. These cameras assist in highway hazard incident management, but they also primarily help out in the law enforcement sector with helping out in finding missing persons, in Amber Alerts by tracking down vehicles, with vehicular hijackings, with terrorism, motorcycle theft. and any other felony associated with vehicles. And for more context before I talk about the two House bills, I'd like to talk about Scholl versus the Illinois State Police. Basically, versus Illinois State Police was a case filed by the Liberty Justice Center based in Illinois. And the Liberty Justice Center, they argued again that the ALPR cameras infringed on Fourth Amendment rights due to suspicionless and unwarranted searches. And along with 14th Amendment rights to equal protection, the Liberty Justice Center stated that ALPR cameras and these databases violated constitutional rights. State officials, however, argued that ALPR cameras helped to catch dangerous criminals, which they were used for with the Tamara-Clayton Expressway Act, and that drivers had no real right for reasonable expectation for privacy related to their public license plates. And the presiding judge, eventually dismissed this case due to a lack of finding for or lack of basis for the Liberty Justice Center to sue on behalf of all Illinois residents, and the fact that ALPR there was not enough data about the misuse of ALPR cameras. And now getting into the two House bills after all that context, these House bills have been introduced to the Illinois Congress last year due to these multiple controversies related to ALPR in Illinois. And House Bill 5151 and House Bill 5231, they are very similar. So you can see these bills as competing. The main di the main difference between these bills is in the scope of these bills and the amount of sponsors of these bills. House Bill 5151 is a massive bill sponsored by over 20 House representatives. And House Bill 5231, on the other hand, is only sponsored by one sponsor, that being Jaime M. Andrade Jr. And these bills are very similar in that they create comprehensive ALPR systems. They help strengthen privacy concerns. They help in imposing transparency regulations on agencies that use ALPR, and they overall enforce compliance. And getting into 5151, 5151 creates a very comprehensive ALPR law. As there are over 20 House sponsors, 5151 includes a variety of different rules, a variety of different penalties. The list of penalties is over a page long on the actual bill. So there is definitely a very comprehensive listing of ALPR regulations, how to enforce it, and other things like that. And also in 5151, it includes many transparency issues, such as restricting unauthorized data sharing, requiring audits, requiring public meetings, just things to appease the public and make the people feel safe about how the ALPR data is actually being used. And most importantly, however, if you can see highlighted, ALPR data is exempted from public records requests, which basically means that a person, if they specifically FOIA data from an ALPR database, then that agency can restrict the information in the ALPR data that the person is requesting, which provides some clarity for different agencies and using ALPR cameras too. And additionally, HB 5151, in limiting misuse and penalties, HB 51 includes a variety of different penalties like individual fines, as in losing vendor contracts for ALPR technologies, and overall giving individuals the right to sue for damages caused by unlawful ALPR use. Now, as I mentioned previously in a slide about ALPR databases, there are not a uniform set amount of time before ALPR data can be deleted. Like in the Leeds case, there are 90 days before the information is deleted forever. However, HB 5151 introduces a system which, after 30 days, if approved by a judge, if a law enforcement agency, if a attorney, or if any other agency proves that the ALPR data will be used for a case or in a criminal investigation, then a judge can approve that the ALPR evidence be used outside of a 30-day period. However, two, the improperly obtained ALPR data evidence, if the evidence is misused for any personal reasons, that makes the ALPR data inadmissible in court. Now, introducing 5231. 5231 is a much different bill. So 5151 is the whole state, while 5231 mostly focuses on law enforcement agencies. So 5231, in limiting misuse, really, it only allows police to use ALPR for specific public safety purposes, like criminal investigations, like those Amber Alerts, and identifying stolen vehicles and licenses. And in protecting privacy and also adding more transparency, 5231 requires Illinois law enforcement agencies to only purchase from state-approved vendors, which basically means that in purchasing ALPR technology, a agency must report which vendor they are buying from. They must be from a list that is approved by the state. And unlike 51512, there is a hard limit. It cannot be extended to the retention of ALPR data, and that is only after 21 days, which limits access to the information. And in 5231, increasing the accountability, 5231, like 5151, requires agencies to adopt public policies, to conduct audits, publish annual reports, and hold and also require ALPR usage for vehicle stops and misuse. And if an agency misuses ALPR, it makes ALPR evidence also inadmissible in court. So both bills are pretty similar, and that is why we are discussing both of these bills. And now for one of the bigger questions regarding both of these bills. What do these bills say about federal/outside agencies? Specifically with DHS and ICE, there is much concern about police and agencies sharing information to these outside agencies. Both bills have some understanding of this. As 5151 states in Section 40 of the bill that the agency must report any request for data for ALPR data, whether it be in-state or out-of-state requests. The agency must report who is exactly requesting this information and why they are requesting this information. And they must also report how many of these requests resulted in disclosure. On the other hand, 5231, there is no specific wording regarding federal or outside agencies, which may be seen as a negative to 5231 or a positive to 5231, depending on what side a person is looking at the bill. So there is more leeway in 5231 in comparison to 5151. And that is that for the presentation. If you have any questions, you may email the Citizen Advocacy Center. It's email right here. You may check the website out for any brochures regarding ALPR, and you may call the phone number for the Citizen Advocacy Center. Thank you so much. My name is Ethan Wong, and thank you so much for listening to this presentation.